Good morning. Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is dedicated in loving memory of Tera Hakim Lilu Nishmat Tera Bat Frida, sponsored by the Ajmi family, Ruach Adonai, Tinichenna Began Eden. Dedicated for a speedy and complete Refuah Shlema for our Rabbanit, Chana Farhi, Chana Bat Sima Fega. Be'ezrat Hashem, we should be zochet to see her have a complete recovery. Miravi Amenu. Amen. Also, for speedy and complete recovery for Rabbi Eli Bari Eliyahu Shimon Ben Mazar Fortuna, and dedicated loving memory Mrs. Lily Safra Nishmat Leah Bat Chana, whose philanthropy has reached so many and continues to reach so many throughout the entire world. Week of Cobra is also sponsored by David E. Ash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to go today and every day. We'd like to extend a warm welcome to Rabbi Finchas, who is here with us from Eretz Israel, Mumche in Halakha, especially in the realm of medical Halakha. It's a wonderful privilege to have him here with us. Of course, if anyone has questions and would like to speak to him, the Rabbi is very, very generous with his time, with his speaking. It's a zechut to have such a Talmid Chacham, a person who's so l'shem shamayim, here with us, Rabbi. Hazaku Baruch. The pasuk tells us, "Ve'ata Tetzaveh et bnei Israel, v'yikchu elecha shemen zayit zach, katit lamaor lahalot ner tamid." It teaches us that we're supposed to have, for the menorah, we're supposed to have the purest olive oil. Shemen zayit, oil from an olive, zach. It needs to be pure. Katit lamaor. That means it was pressed specifically lamaor for the light. You can't press it and think to yourself, I want to make an omelet, and then be like, oh, I forgot, I have to light the menorah. Let's do the menorah with this one. If you pressed it for an omelet or for a donut, it doesn't work. It's got to be pressed l'shem for the sake of lamaor. Laha'alot ner tamid, in order to raise a ner tamid, this everlasting flame of the Jewish people. Now, my friends, before we get into anything else, there's one obvious question that needs to be addressed. And we've already addressed this question in one iteration when it came to Shulchan and the class that we did last week, which was titled VIP Table. Just a quick shout out to all the people that messaged over the last week at the classes we did on Terumah about building a Jewish home from all the different angles. A lot of people actually reached out to say they were very helpful. If anyone would like, all those classes are uploaded on Spotify and TorahAnytime.com. You can go back and look at those classes, VIP Table, Home Improvement Project. Those are all different ideas surrounding this concept of the building of a Jewish home, the relationships within it. We pointed out last week a very simple question. When we're talking in the construction of the Beit HaMikdash, we tell you how to build each one of the many vessels: the Aron, the Shulchan, the Menorah, and the Mizbeach. And actually, yesterday in the Shabbat afternoon class, I asked the question. It's interesting because we have a parasha dedicated to building the temple, and it tells you those four vessels. Okay, those four vessels. That's the order: Aron, Shulchan, Menorah. Okay, Mizbeach. Those are the kelim. We skip two kelim that are not mentioned at all. Which two kelim are not mentioned? Kior and Mizbeach HaPnimi. Those two elements are not in the parasha. They're separated, and it's weird. Why are they not in the parasha, which describes the construction of the Beit HaMikdash? Okay, that's question number one. So we explained yesterday in the Shabbat afternoon class that there were four pillars of a Jewish home, and those four are these four kelim. Now it's interesting to me, and I asked everyone to remember in the Shabbat afternoon class, but I forgot to answer why. That what are the four kelim that I mentioned? Aron, Shulchan, Menorah, Mizbeach. That's the order. In between the Menorah and the Mizbeach, there's a departure. We talk about something for an extended period of time. What do we talk about? The Yiriot, okay, which is the curtains that were then used to create the top of the the top of the Mishkan. And the reason I think why it was laid out in that way is because the Roshei Tevot of those kelim, with or without Yiriot in the middle, spells the word Ashemim. We have that word in the pasuk by Yosef as-Sadiq, when the brothers sell Yosef, and then they come to a recognition that they made a mistake. And what do they say? Aval Ashemim anachnu. We are guilty. We are responsible. We made this mistake. I think maybe the Torah is hinting to you that if a person doesn't spend the time to be able to insert these things into their home, Ashemim anaknu, we are responsible, we are guilty for the destruction. As our Chachamim explained to us, every generation that does not have the Beit HaMikdash rebuilt in their day, it is as if they destroyed it themselves. So a lot of times you have a person sitting there and their house is in ruins, their marriage fell apart, their relationship with their children is gone, and they sit there and they say, why did this happen to me? Rochi, 9 times out of 10, it didn't happen to you. You happened to it. Not that you did something wrong, not that you broke, not that you destroyed, but like we say, every generation that doesn't build, it's considered as if they destroyed. Did you build? Did you put these things into place? And we explained yesterday and throughout last week the implications, the idea behind each one of the kelim as it is referenced in V'chen Ta'asu. But we pointed out that one thing is interesting, stands out as an anomaly. Because the whole of the parasha describes the construction of the temple. It doesn't describe anything that you do in the temple, except for one exception, in the Shulchan, where it tells us about the Lechem HaPanim. Now, I don't really need to know about the Lechem HaPanim now. It's part of the order of the sacrifices of what you bring in the temple. So it didn't belong. We explained how a part of the Shulchan itself is the bread that's on it. Okay, it was a very deep idea. And as we explained on Shabbat, all the Sefarim tell us that there's great secrets about the Lechem HaPanim. The Arizal says, according to Zohar, reveal to us the secret of the 12 breads. The Rambam, when he gives examples in Moreh Nevuchim, tells us what each thing means. He tells you he doesn't know the reason for this thing, for the Lechem HaPanim. So that's a great secret. But you see as well that this thing was part of the construction. Here again, I'm going to ask a question. We're going to go from the construction of the temple to the construction of the clothing of the Kohanim. Primarily, that's what happens in Terumah, and in Tetzaveh we move to the clothing of the Kohanim, of the Kohen Gadol. But then we take a short detour, and the detour is this point right over here. Ve'ata Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu elecha shemen zayit zach. They're about to build the temple and make the clothing. Why are you commanding me now about the olive oil that I'm going to need for the menorah? It's a strange thing. It's out of place. Now, in the same way that we understood that the bread had to be a part of the Shulchan, and that's why it was mentioned as part of the construction of the blueprint for the Mishkan, so too we have to understand that there's an element of the lights, of the oil, that is incumbent upon us to discuss here, even though it's not part of the menorah, because if it was, it would have been mentioned in the same way in Parashat Terumah, which it wasn't. It's mentioned in passing, but not like it's mentioned by the Lechem HaPanim. But we have to understand what is it coming over here, and why is it the separation between the Beit HaMikdash and the Begadim. Now, my friends, I want to share with you an idea that we say every Saturday night. We talk about this idea and we say, Mavdil ben Kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech. Now, it's an interesting thing, because when we separate between Kodesh, holy, and mundane, that's an interesting separation. That makes sense to me. But what is the continuation of that beracha? Mabdil ben Kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech, between light and dark. There's 6 other days which have a differentiation between light and dark. Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night. I get that Sunday is not the same as Sunday night. I understand that. But what does that have to do with the separation of Kodesh and Chol? Did you ever wonder this? You want to tell me you're separating Kodesh Chol? I get it. Right? Ben Yisrael la'amim. I get it. Ben Yom HaShivi'i l'shesh timei hamaseh. Between the Jews and the non-Jews. I get it. There's a difference of the Kedusha, of what you stand for, of what you live for. Okay, I get it. Between 7 days of the week and Shabbat. I get it. This is a different day. It stands for something else. What's the difference, Or and Choshech, in this context? It's strange. It doesn't belong. The answer is that in truth, there is a difference of Kodesh and Chol between Or and Choshech. Now, it might be that the day is not holier than the night, although there's a Gemara that talks about the night being a time of more sin. There's another Gemara that talks about that the night is a time which is miyuchad for Torah. So I don't think that the night is less holy per se than the day. But I think we're learning something very beautiful over here. In the morning, we make a beracha. It's one of the first berachot that we make in the morning. Hanoten sechvi bina leavchin ben yom uben layla. We give God an interesting blessing. Two different ways of interpreting the blessing. Either it's that we have the wisdom to differentiate between day and night, and some people translate the word sechvi to mean that God gives the rooster the ability to differentiate between day and night. Two different opinions as to how to explain this idea. Okay? Now, to me, there's something very powerful in that beracha. What is your beracha? What are you blessing? You woke up in the morning. Hashem, thank you for me being able to tell the difference between a day and a night. It's a strange blessing. What are we saying? What are we communicating? Even stranger, if you're blessing God randomly for the fact that the rooster could, Hashem, thank you so much for allowing the donkey to tell the difference between the food that he eats and something he doesn't eat. What are we doing? The answer, my friends, is that our beracha begins and tells us that unless we are able to understand the difference between daytime and nighttime, we live meaningless lives. In our world today, it's not as prevalent, it's not as noticed. But the time for work used to be the daytime. They would get up at the crack of dawn, every minute of light was used. When it came time for nighttime, that was when they stopped working. So the nighttime was a time of rejuvenation, of sleep, of storing up energy. And the daytime was the time for a person to be able to expend that energy, to be able to do, to produce, to achieve, to accomplish. So we start off by saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I need you to understand this is very important. One of the first berachot that we say, we start off and talk about the fact that our body actually works. Without health, you have nothing, okay? But before we could talk about anything else, before we could talk about how blessed we are, that we could walk, that we have clothing, that we could see, before we talk about the fact that we were born free men, that we were part of the Jewish people, before you can bless God that you're a Jew, you have to bless God that you understand how to take something in life and do something with that something. How to achieve, how to work hard, how to accomplish, how to create, and to take pleasure in working, in doing something, in producing. A person that could sleep through the day, just like he sleeps through the night, is a person who was better off never being born. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. A person who is happily unemployed, happy to collect rent checks, happy to collect welfare checks, happy to do that, sit back, do nothing. Better he was not born. I'm not saying we should go kill someone who's on welfare. That's not what I'm saying. The pasuk says, Adam le'amal yulad. Literally, the pasuk is saying that a human being was born to work. We were born to toil. We were born to sweat. We were born to work hard. It is only in our generation that we have an idea that working hard and schwitzing and stress is not a good thing. What do we do when we have stress now? We medicate it away. You can medicate with pills. You can medicate with alcohol. You can medicate with drugs. You can medicate with a lot of things, by the way. Okay? You can do a lot of things to get rid of stress. But who said that stress was not supposed to be part of the human experience? Who said that? Who said that we were not supposed to go to bed at night exhausted from work? Whatever your work is. Learning, work, it's not supposed to be this hard. Really? I think it is supposed to be this hard. And if it's not this hard, in our world we have this idea that if something is hard, that means it must not be right. I think it's the opposite. If something is so easy that it doesn't take any effort whatsoever, that's how you know it's not right. Because Adam le'amal yulad. Now the funny thing is, we think as human beings that we were born once, 1978, March 7th. We were born. For the rest of my life I live until, Bezat Hashem, 120 I'll die. Actually, Bezat Hashem, I won't die. Mashiach will be here, we'll live forever. Take that, strike that from the record. But actually, as we say in the Tefillah, it doesn't work that way. Actually, HaMechadesh b'tubo b'chol yom tamid. A person is reborn every single day. And if you've ever felt something, a job, a mission, a deal, a Gemara, a class, where you felt yourself come alive, get excited. You ever feel that? You feel so engaged, you're like, yes! Right? You're driving down the court. There's a guy there open. The ball goes back, the ball goes forth. You do this unbelievable play. Yes! You ever feel that? You go to court, difficult court case, dragging out for months. You think you're going to lose. You come up with something. End of the day, yes! That feeling is another example, another moment of rebirth, where you've experienced such joy and excitement and electricity because your hard work paid off. My friends, we need to embrace sweating. It's true at work. It's true in a marriage. I don't want to talk. If I say that, she's going to say that. If then she says that, I go there, then there's what I need these problems. So what do? You live with a flawed, you live with a underwhelming marriage for as long as you could stand it, because you don't want to do the work. What a waste. You know what? Even if it never blows up, you're vanillaing your way through life. A person each day needs to ask this question. Am I living a life of night times? Or am I living a life of daytimes? The Torah was going to tell us something very powerful here. I'm teaching you how to build your life, how to build your home. And there's many lessons in the kelim and the construction of the temple. And in just a minute, I'm going to start telling you how much of an elevated person you're going to be. The Gemara tells us in the name of Rabbi Yohanan, Mani Mechabdi. Mani Mechabdi means clothing brings a person respect. You know what you feel like when you're really well dressed? You know, you got that beautiful suit on, you feel like $1 million, you feel great. Mani Mechabdi. They did a study, by the way, you should just know, in private schools. And the schools where they made the kids wear suits and ties to school. All over England, by the way, you have it. The dress code itself raises morale, raises behavioral responses, raises the grades of the children. Mani Mechabdi. We did a program in England where we taught people when they were choosing where to go to university, you know, how to choose different careers, challenging them, making them see the world, introducing them to really important people in each industry. It was an unbelievable program, okay? But part of the program was we would send the kids a message the night before we were going to the city to meet the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and we would send the kids 2 words: suit up. And the kids would come to school ready to go in to Thomson Reuters, ready to go in to Herbert Smith Freehills, ready to go in to the media arm of Harry Potter. They went and spoke, but what happened was, all of a sudden, this 11th grader, he's dressed the part, he's wearing a tie, he comes up to the CEO and asks, is there any way, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, is there any way I could get an internship here? And the kid got an internship. Children who normally are not thinking this way are sitting there so engaged that they decided, they called home in the middle of the session and said, I want to change my major. I want to go to take another course in university. When you're dressed that way, you think that way. So it is incredibly important, as the Pasuk says, why are we dressing the Kohanim this way? Lechavod u'letifaret. For honor and glory. And that sounds like a funny thing. You're coming in front of God and you're going to walk in with this clothing on, lechavod u'letifaret, for honor and for glory. Opposite. Doesn't God love a person who comes in with humility? Doesn't God love a person who's low? And there are 2 answers that are brought in the commentaries. One answer is, it's true. God doesn't need the Kohen with his kavod and his tifaret. But the Jewish people needed it. The Jewish people needed to come to the rabbi, come to the Kohen, and feel that this person was chashuv. Part of the reason why Aseh Lecha Rav is so important is because if you've not made him into your rabbi, his advice, his teachings, his rulings are worthless. Because they remain in his mind, on his lips, but they don't enter into your realm. When you make him your rabbi, I'll never forget, I came to be a rabbi in England, and it was right in the beginning, and I was I just arrived there, and I started giving classes, and I met some guys, and it was amazing, and I was teaching, and they were loving it, and one guy came up to me, and he said, Rabbi, he was very emotional, and he said, Rabbi, I know you talked about Aseh Lecha, I want to make you my rabbi. He says, so what do I have to do? I said, do you see the ring on your finger? He said, yes. I said, take it off. He takes it off. I said, get down on one knee. He gets down on one knee. I said, say, will you be my rabbi? He's like, well, I was like, get up. He's like, oh, there's not a thing. You know, there's no Hare at Mikudesh, no Hare at Rab Sheli, no, right? But I'll tell you one thing. Although it started as a joke in my mind, I'm not so sure it's that funny. Because today we live in a world where people pick and choose. They go to this rabbi for this, they don't like that he said the fast is over at 6:30. You know, they shop another rabbi because he says 6:22. For 8 minutes of akel, you took your Aseh Lecha Rav, you threw it in the garbage. For 8 minutes, you fasted the whole day. 8 minutes, this rabbi has a different opinion as to when nightfall is. Chalas, he's gone. I go with the 6:14 rabbi. Maybe there needs to be some sort of investiture. There needs to be some sort of process so people feel like they're connected and they have an obligation to that, to listen, to follow. So the first answer is the Kavod Tiferet was for the people. Am Yisrael needed to buy in to the fact that I'm bringing a korban and this person is going to bring me kapara. That's one answer. It's an answer that we find also why HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not allow a Baal Mum, someone who is disabled, to be a Kohen in the temple. And all the commentaries ask, what does that mean? Why would it make a difference to God that someone is a Baal Mum? Doesn't God love the broken? Doesn't God? And the Mefarshim say that God says, this is not for me. Who did I choose to be my messenger in this world? Moshe Rabbeinu, a Baal Mum. But that's what I'm choosing. Here, you're choosing. You're choosing this person. You need to believe that this person could bring you kapara. So therefore, lechavot tifaret. But my friends, a second answer is perhaps a little bit more, I think, important to this discussion. And that is the Kavod Tiferet is not for everybody else. It's for you. It's Hamavdil ben Or lechoshech. It's understanding that this work, the building of this Beit HaMikdash, the opportunities of Teshuvah, I am someone, I matter. I am someone who lives a life which is respectable. Mani mechabdi, I'm going to dress the part, I'm going to do the work, I'm going to come to Beit Knesset, and I understand that this is not about me. You know what? Who cares? It's not about you. When you've done something wrong, you need to make it right. Even if you don't feel you need to make it right, you still need to make it right. You know what? I hurt this guy's feelings, I took money from him, I never paid him back. I'm going to declare bankruptcy. It's the law. Bankruptcy says, law says I don't have to pay the guy back. Ganav. The appellate court, the city court, the state court, the federal court cannot unmake you a criminal for stealing someone's money that you borrowed and didn't pay back. I don't care if it's chapter 7, chapter 11, chapter 62, or the whole book. You borrowed money, you have to pay back. The U.S. government cannot annul your responsibility to pay money that you took from someone, and you have a responsibility to give it back. If it takes you your whole life, you have to pay it back. That's what it means, the Kavod Tiferet. When I come to the Beit HaMikdash, and I understand that this is a model for the way that I build my life, do you respect yourself? Do you understand that you were born in this world to work and work and work? And you know what the crazy thing is? If I said work 3 times and you felt like that's a lot of work, then you have work to do. The Mishnah says, Ehov et hamelacha. We have to love the day. We have to be excited for the day. You see a new project. It's exciting. It's not like, oh. If you love when projects end and not projects when projects begin, you might be in the wrong job. I don't know. If you're on vacation and you don't want to come back, you might need to switch jobs. I tell you, I love vacation. You know, some people can't switch off. I'm very good. I can switch off. Mavdil ben yom ben layla. No problem. Put the blackout shades. I understand. You need to recover. But for how long? A day, 2 days. How long could you sit in the sun, roasting like a piece of chicken? That's what you are? How long? How long before you feel like I need to do something? I need to do something. Vacation's amazing. Spending time away, rejuvenating, gathering your strength, new perspective. I get it. Amazing. Until when? So the pasuk introduces the idea of mani mechabdi, of respecting yourself, by understanding that this respect, it's not a matter of kavod, it's not a matter of arrogance, it's not a matter of making yourself look good, it's a matter of understanding what does it take to be good? What does it take to accomplish? Rabbi Akiva is 40 years old. And then one day he's walking down the road and he sees a rock and there's water dripping on the rock. And the rock eventually, obviously, has a hole in it. And he looks at this rock and he sees it has a hole and he says to himself, wow, if a rock, which is so hard, could be penetrated by water, which is so soft, how much more so could my heart, which is made of flesh, which is soft, be penetrated by the powerful words of Torah? I always love that. That means that Rabbi Akiva was not yet a person who even knew Aleph Bet. And he already made his first Kal Vachomer. And what happens? He goes to study and he knows nothing. Could you imagine the embarrassment of walking into a class of children? Everyone is sitting there, they're 3 years old. And the rabbi, the Mora in kindergarten, is teaching. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. And there's a guy in the back, 40 years old. Today you call cops. And I bet you there was kids that got it faster than him. And there was kids that were more advanced than him. I'm embarrassed. Would you have stayed? You got inspired. Would you have stayed? That's what it means. The Torah is telling you here, you have to appreciate, you have to understand, or lechoshech, the difference between the life that you lead when you're willing to work hard, when you're willing to try and work on becoming a respectable person, a good person. You understand that, then you're willing to put in the effort. Eventually he becomes, again, understand this, the greatest Torah scholar that the Jewish people have ever had and will ever have. I love pointing this out. How do I know that Rabbi Akiva was the greatest scholar the Jewish people ever had? Is that an opinion? Do I happen to like Rabbi Akiva? I remember learning Gemara with one guy, and he's like, oh, Rabbi Nachman, I love this guy. I was like, totally different Rabbi Nachman. The guy thought that Rabbi Nachman in the Gemara was Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. He said, I love this guy. I was a different guy. I'm not saying Rabbi Akiva, I love this guy. You know who says it? Gemara says it. That when Moshe Rabbeinu was in Shamayim, he sees HaKadosh Baruch Hu is tying the crowns on the letters. And Moshe says, I don't know what those are. What are those? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, they're going to come as Sadiq, a Talmid Chacham who's going to be able to interpret each one of these crowns. Who is he? Rabbi Akiva. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, then why don't you have him give the Torah? Moshe says that this guy who's 40 years old before he learns a word. How many times do I get a message, my friends, from someone who says, Rabbi, I can't believe I found this class. I bumped into it, a friend introduced me, I saw it on Instagram, someone sent me a clip from Torah Anytime, I got from iTorah. I got your class, I got into it. I'm learning, I'm growing. How old are they? 30, 40, 50. Someone told me that their grandmother listens every day. She's over 90 years old. She says you changed her life. I was like, what life? She's 95. But that's the answer, my friends, of Mabdil ben Or lechoshech. You're 95 years old, who cares? All the days before you didn't do something today. Do something now. You can't join the Gemara class because you never learned Gemara, so what? Before you learned this class, did you listen to this one? You didn't listen. Before you knew the Aleph Bet, did you know the Aleph Bet? No, that's why you're learning it. Or means turn on the lights. Learn something new. In fact, our Chachamim explain that Shemen is an allegory, oil is an allegory for Torah. And therefore the Torah is teaching us. I'm giving you all these lessons, but at the end of the day, if you're not willing to see the difference between the daytime and the nighttime, between light and dark, then there is no Kodesh and Chol for you. There's no holy, there's no mundane, there's no Beit HaMikdash, there's no clothing. So let's go. Get on the train. And I'll tell you one thing, if anyone here has ever become a runner, has ever ridden a Peloton, a bike, has ever played basketball, those first times you go, every muscle, every bone in your body is killing. When you go to the gym and the train is one more, and you're like, ah! You do it enough times in a row, you know what happens? If you miss a day, you feel like something's missing. And you push, and you push, and you love it. There's nothing more beautiful in this world than trying to learn a Gemara or one of the poskim, not understanding it. 16 times, break your head, bang it against the wall, until finally, all of a sudden, the key comes, and it opens the lock, and the lights turn on. And you're like, oh my God! I wish and I bless each and every one of you with that pleasure, with that gift. That we should be zocheh, la'avdir ben or u'ben hachoshech. That we're willing to work hard in our marriages, in our work, in our life, in our Torah, and be'ezrat Hashem. We'll be zocheh to be dressed lekavod u'letifaret. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bless us with those magnificent clothing yet again. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.